Welcome to our 12th episode of This Week in the Pentecostal Evangel. My name is Dr. Lisa Millen, and I'm professor of church history here at AGTS.
My name is Jason Sprinkle, and I work at the Preaching Center.
I'm Rick Wadholm, associate professor of Old Testament.
And I'm Bob Eby, associate professor of biblical exposition. If you're finding this useful, if it's something you're enjoying, we just encourage you to like, subscribe, and consider sharing this content with others who might find it useful in their life.
So we're actually in the, this is bad. I turned my page and then I lose track of the March 29, 1924 issue of the Pentecostal Evangel. And I love, this was right on the cover. We had this, a family and missionary paper.
I love that.
A family and missionary paper. What a fantastic tagline.
What a great description.
And some of this was, I was even thinking like our recent trend being used at General Council about being a part of the family, that family language return.
I
had
church,
the same
our
thought.
family.
I was like, there was sort of this renewal. I just had that immediate reflection just from the cover.
They love coming up with little taglines because they're changing them all the time.
Right.
I love it.
But just to see that again. But this was on page 5, an article titled Cast Out.
Yes.
And basically telling the story from the Gospel of John, chapter 9, the man who gets healed of his blindness. And then because of the testimony of his experience with Jesus, healing and, I trust this guy. He's cast out. And that becomes for him by the end, this narrative of, don't be bothered if you're cast out from those other churches by those other people, right? Or anybody.
Yeah.
And directly tied in with, they're probably going to be left at the tribulation. Like that.
Right.
These are the exact words.
Yeah. Better to suffer tribulation and
better to suffer right now, tribulation,
Yep.
and be cast out now than to be cast out then. And just the potent rhetoric and the expectation. Jesus is coming. It really does matter what you do and what you believe right now.
And also speaking to a real need, right?
Yeah.
Because there are those in traditional churches. Pentecost is still very young.
Yeah.
There are those who have encountered this, whether they've been to revivals or coming out of Azusa Street many years before, but they've had this experience. They've gone back to their church and they have been cast out. Mm-hmm. So it is also speaking to people who are now homeless in a sense, right? They've lost their church, and the Assemblies is saying, we're here for you.
And the emphasis on two really key things for us: baptism in the Holy Spirit and healing.
Yep.
These are the things. And you know what happens? Because I think we get much less of this in time, right? This idea we're outsiders, we're cast away. That changes in the verbiage. But it's also interesting to think this is pre-healing movement, healing revivals, Oral Roberts and things like that. And it's pre-charismatic movement, second wave Pentecostalism. Correct. So I think it's really interesting. Today, if you espouse the fact that you believe God can heal, you're probably not getting kicked out of many churches.
No, for sure.
Even non-Pentecostal churches. And even how many notable names have come out and said they pray in tongues that are not Pentecostals. Scholars to pastors to across the spectrum of churches. You're not getting kicked out from that anymore.
A huge cultural shift.
You see how the Pentecostals gave rise to movements like the healing mid-century healing movement and the charismatic movement. But then what they did for us is they made it far less likely that you're getting kicked out for some of these elements. Right. It's an interesting development.
This one resonated with me personally. I'm glad you mentioned this. So this was my grandparents. My dad was miraculously healed. Should have died as a young boy. So late 1950s, he's healed. And my grandparents are asked to leave their Methodist church. Yeah. And the only church in Woodstock, Illinois that would accept them was the Assembly of God there. Wow. And so it resonated with me because this, again, that was 25, 30 years after this, but it still was a felt experience. Yeah.
That's interesting because in the 1996 episode that we read, there was, I think it was 96, the one that we did earlier. It was talking about why you should go to a full gospel church.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, you're not getting kicked out, but so you should leave and go to
that language is a definite change. And we've actually commented on that before because you feel in the early days, we matter, we're credible, even though people don't like us. Then it becomes,
Right.
look who we are. Come on
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah,
Come on over here.
Well, I was really, I wanted to comment on this article, The Praise Cure,
Yes.
by Dr. Lillian B. Yeomans. So I've always been interested in her, and she writes a lot. I've
man,
come across her
prolific.
so many times in my research through the Pentecostal Evangel. And, you know, she was a physician and a surgeon, and she practiced with her mother. And she had been addicted and had found no other cure. And even in all of her medical training, and only through divine healing was she cured of her addiction. And so she's talking here about the praise cure and about all of the different cures that are available to people. They try this, they try that, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't work. But one cure that always works is the praise cure. So she talks about how, and she uses the story of Jesus healing the blind man and how he doesn't get healed right away, and Jesus comes back in right for a second round, and
a little holy spit. There's
and a little holy
used.
spit. And she's like, you know, don't be satisfied with that half cure,
Rick
because
copyright.
people will say, what kind of Jesus is this? You
Right.
know, what
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
Jesus do you serve if it's just a half cure? But if you want the whole cure, you've got to praise. And it's that entering into praise that will bring you through to a full healing. And she says it will work every time. And so I think that's really interesting. And I want to jump then to the back here, and on page 15, these are advertisements.
Yes.
I always love reading through these. And an evangelist woman by the name of Nellie Landerbaugh is looking for a tent. She wants a tent. Will anybody have a good size gospel tent for rent or sale?
Yes.
And please write my address, stating the price and other necessary information. So she would like a tent. I would like to know if
Did
Nellie
she
ever
get her
Did Nellie ever get
a
a tent?
tent.
Nellie,
Yeah.
if you're watching,
Nellie, if
If
you're
you're
watching, I've got many other
Yeah, that's
questions.
right. That's
actually,
right.
we will pay your way to interview you. If you're watching.
102 years later, you're still watching.
Right underneath that advertisement for the tent is still relevant today. Every Sunday school, I would just say every children's ministry, should have a supply of missionary barrels. Encourage the
yes.
children to give to missions. Barrels can be secured from the missionary treasure at $1 per dozen. I think they're free now today. But please, get a buddy barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is before.
It is.
This
It
is
is.
before buddies. They were already using. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They were
It
already
is
using barrels as banks.
Well, the imagery comes from that's how our missionaries
I was gonna say,
shipped
yeah.
their stuff overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a small replica of
A testimony to how they would ship all their
exactly.
earthly
Yeah.
belongings.
Yeah.
Put them in the barrels, put them on a ship.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it is before BGMC exists as a ministry of. But I found that fascinating.
I was
Yeah,
also
it is.
who's making all the little wooden barrels? I don't
don't know.
know. And like, yeah.
Some
If
Cooper
you-
somewhere.
If
Yeah.
you made the wooden barrels, please.
Drop a comment below.
Actually,
I mean, now
I'm-
we'd get them what from Oriental Trading Company?
Oriental Trading Post. Yes.
I'm guessing all of us have at least one, if not several, iterations of.
I have. I think I have
Yeah.
every iteration in my office here.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
In fact, one of the churches I pastored, we had an inflatable buddy barrel.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
A giant. I mean, the thing had to be like 12 feet tall.
For sure.
Okay, so you know, the grief you guys give me for who I am,
Yeah.
maybe talking a little too much. I will just tell you, I put that at the feet of Buddy Barrel. Because when I
Blame
was
it on
probably
Buddy.
blame it on Buddy, I was probably about 8 years old, and we had this play that we did for church, and it was like the whole Sunday morning, and it was Buddy Barrel going around the world encountering missions.
Oh, yes.
And it was the first time I was ever put in front of a group and to speak.
Were you
Buddy.
wearing?
And you were
I was
Buddy.
dressed as Buddy Barrel. There was a costume
We
made
need
out of
videographic evidence.
laundry baskets and burlap.
Oh yes.
And I remember Sister Aldine, who was probably in her 90s, who shows up in AG history books, her and her husband. The guys that went to Brazil as the first missionaries, her husband prophesied that over them. It's in Gary McGee's book. Sister Aldine was in our church, and she came up after the Buddy Barrel play and shook my hand and said, "Young man, God's going to use you." And now I just love
Here
the
you are.
spotlight way too much.
I would like to mention just briefly, I know that I
How many
already
are you
had
gonna do
my
today,
turn,
Lisa? How many are you
but
gonna do?
just before we go on, so on the back page, helpful books for the home.
Yeah, I love
Carrie
that.
Judd Montgomery, Prayer of Faith, Maria Woodworth Eder, Holy Ghost Sermons, Maria Woodworth Eder, or Mariah, I should say, Spirit-Filled Sermons, and then a textbook on prophecy, and a book on miracles by Mrs. Lily Denham. So many books by women being advertised here. And so again, we're readers.
We are.
Yep.
Amazing.
There were so many things in this edition that I really enjoyed. I think this also deserves to be read verbatim. Okay. So it's at this section of missionary reports that the Pentecostal Evangel is publishing. And so the editor says, please write reports separate from other matters of business. Write on one side of the sheet only. If typewriter is used, do not write lines close together. If possible, furnish copy, which will not have to be rewritten before it goes to the printer. Extra work means extra expense to the publishing house, as well as added burden to already overtaxed workers. Thank you. I thought that was so spectacular.
The most passive aggressive.
I know.
Everybody do this the right way from the beginning.
Passive aggressive is also in our Pentecostal roots, apparently.
Amazing.
Well, at one place it said, I don't know if it was into this issue, but only put dimes in the right envelopes because it causes problems in our confusion in our office.
Yeah.
Well, the missionary page too has an interesting. You've got William Foe, who is, and he was, I think the first full-time missions secretary. We had other people who were in other offices who also function that way.
Yeah.
But he's a fascinating character because he disappears from the record. There's something that happens. And I don't know what it is, but and you can read about it in some of our treatments of history. Foe something happened, and he is gone and never spoken of again.
William Foe, if you're watching, we'd like to
drop a
like
comment.
to find out what happened.
Tell us where you went. What happened? And we'd love to know.
Somebody's got to bring up this about every little bit helps.
No, you can do your fourth one.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. We hurt Bob's feelings.
Bob holds a grudge. Episodes later, Bob's still holding a grudge.
Speaking of passive aggressive,
very angry Buddy Barrel. A very angry
All
Buddy
right.
Barrel.
Anyways, on page 10, every little bit helps. And so they're talking about churches being involved in building projects. Sometimes when there's a building program, Assemblies of God and Sunday schools they're tempted to let down on their missions giving. Don't do it.
That's right.
Says there's always a way.
and that still happens today. And I think we would say, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't be
do it.
tempted.
That's right.
Keep supporting the missionaries.
That's right.
That's who we are.
So, did everyone get a chance to share everything that they
Enough
had
times.
to say?
I have more I'd like to say, but I'm going to wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us in this episode of This Week in the Pentecostal Evangel, and we hope you'll join us next time. Thanks.